Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach.Better from Maduro Learning. My name is Clint Hamada.
And my name is Kim Capino, and we'll be your hosts for today's episode. This week, we're talking to Danny Glasner, K12 Teacher-Librarian at UWC Thailand in Phuket. Over the course of his career, Danny has been a classroom teacher, a librarian, and a coach, so he draws from lots of different experiences in our conversation about librarians and coaches today. He highlights the importance of collaborative relationships and making coaching the most effective it can be, and points out some really interesting similarities and differences between being a librarian and being a coach. Please note that Clint wasn't able to be here with us today, so it's just me and Danny.
If you enjoy any part of this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us to know what you want to hear more about. Also, subscribe to the channel to see all of our coaching videos and click on the notifications bell so you know as soon as each video is posted.
And please make sure to watch all the way to the end. We've got two great opportunities for your professional learning that we think you'll love. Let's get started. Danny, can you tell us a little bit about your professional experience, where you are, who you are, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. My name is Danny Glasner. I'm currently located in Phuket, Thailand, working as a K12 Teacher-Librarian at UWC, United World College of Thailand. Actually, early years to grade 12 would be more accurate because we go as young as 18 months at UWC Thailand. Yes, we have 18-month-old kids visiting the library, which is actually pretty awesome. It means you get at least half the class to give you a hug as soon as, before they enter the door, pretty much. So that's pretty nice. This is I think it's my 15th year as an educator. I was a classroom teacher for about 10 years. I taught every grade, I think, from grade 1 to grade 9 in Canada, in Turkey, middle school, ESL for 4 years, in Vietnam as a classroom teacher, grade 3, grade 4 for a couple of years. In South China, I migrated from being a classroom teacher to a tech coach and did that for a few years. And then kind of realized that I really liked the tech coaching aspect, but I also thought that a librarian, and still think to this day actually, that a librarian is very much a coach. An information literacy coach, a tech coach, a literacy coach, and so on and so forth. So I actually, in my heart, I still consider myself a coach very much. So.
Awesome. So you have a lot of insight into both these roles, the librarian's role, the coaching role, and of course the classroom teacher role. So now, from your perspective as a librarian, what do you think coaches do? What do you think their role is in the school?
I think almost everyone who doesn't have, a designated teaching load is there to support teaching and learning in a multitude of ways. We are there to support, in the case of coaches and librarians, because I see them very similarly, as I mentioned. We're supporting a community of learners. We're supporting the parents. We are supporting the students. We are supporting the classroom teachers. We are supporting administration. We are helping in every way we can to make teaching and learning run well.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about how do you work with the coaches in your experience at any of those schools you mentioned. As a librarian, you could even tell us from your perspective as a classroom teacher, how have you worked with coaches? How do you collaborate with them?
Sure. I've listened to some of the previous podcasts relating to Coach.Better, and so I echo what a lot of them say. I mean, culture means a lot. The school culture impacts how coaches are perceived, how librarians are perceived. In many ways, they both are kind of like this middle leadership type position. And so the culture of the school has a great impact on how you're able to do your job and how you're able to help others. So now where I am, I completely got to choose what my schedule looks like. So as a librarian, from wearing the very librarian hat, where my primary job is to make children book addicts or reading addicts, right? From that hat, I said, okay, well, I want my best clients, the ones that get most addicted, right? The grade ones, the kindergarten, when you're younger, the preschool age, I want to see them every single week, no matter what, right? Because we all know, all the stats show that if you hook kids on reading, they have great success in life, right? So I was able to make those decisions and make sure that my schedule set so that I fixed for those classes, I'm always available for them. At the same time, there's 460 kids at UWC from 18 months old to 18 years old. And so there's a lot of people to support. So I also have a very flexible schedule so that I can do that. So I can bed myself in middle school classes to teach information literacy, digital citizenship, and to collaborate with, a variety of teachers, from art teachers to design tech teachers to those teaching ESL or, Lang and Lit kind of thing.
Do you work with the coaches at your school in collaboration? I feel like what you're sharing is a really great example of how you are, as you mentioned before, seeing yourself as a coach. Do you work with coaches at your school? Are there any coaches at your school? How does that work?
Great question. So I'd say we have a couple coach people who moonlight as coaches, right? Nick Garvin, who's a member of Coach.Better, is a kindergarten teacher who moonlights as the technology coach of our school. There is another teacher named Jessica Lee, who's a grade 1 teacher who moonlights as the literacy coach. So they're doing that on, basically on their prep periods and outside hours. They're fulfilling that role. Our school is at a size where we're very close to being able to hire for those types of positions, but we're all kind of carrying extra loads, being that, there's 460 kids at the moment. We totally do stuff together. Right at the beginning of the school year, the primary principal wanted the literacy coach to kind of push the importance of picture books to upper primary, especially primary, because lower primary they use a lot of picture books, so they tend to. Upper primary, things get more serious. It's almost middle school exhibition if you're in grade 5 in the PYP school and so forth. So we did it in the library, and we did it together. Although basically I supported her. She put it all together. I collected books that supported what she was looking for, and I set up all the tech and the learning space, so forth. So that was an example of us collaborating together. And then I'm building a maker space inside the library, like a quiet maker space, basically anything that doesn't, the only thing that would get plugged in would be a glue gun type of makerspace, right? Because it's inside a library and there are no walls and ways to really dampen the sound much. But Nick does what we call a CCA, an ASA, what most people call, is doing one on computational thinking and design thinking and innovation for primary age. And so we're doing that together in the library after school. And we're all kind of learning as we go for some things that we haven't really used, like Osmos, and some of them use like Spheros and Makey-Makeys and all those type of fun tools, giving the kids kind of first exposure to them and to the thinking and learning that goes on behind them. So we'll all be doing that together, even down to the budget to pay for all these fun toys was split between the library and the person who runs the activities, kind of thing. So it was very much done in collaboration.
Cool. So in that sense of you thinking of yourself as a coach, you are supporting the classroom teachers and everyone else who needs your support, and the same way you're supporting the coaches. So it's that real collaborative relationship that you have as a librarian between basically everyone that you work with. Awesome. When you think of it from the other point of view, from the coach's point of view, I want you to tell me your perspective as a librarian, but what are some good things that coaches can do to support you as a librarian? So you just described all those great ways that you support the coaches. How can coaches support and work with you?
I think the coaches that work the best are the ones that realize that we have a lot in common. So at my previous job, another person you might know, Pim, for example, was a K12 tech integrator at my previous school in Beijing. And, we realized really early on that there is a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap in digital literacy, in digital citizenship, in information literacy. There's just a lot of overlap. So I think the coaches that work really well with librarians are the ones that realize that the overlap is there, and let's work together, and let's join all our talents together, and then kind of it saves on planning time. It ends up being great when you can collaborate and present together. It also lets you divide and be in two places at the same time if you're all on the same page. So I guess the ones that realize that we're way more the same than we are.
I see that my screen is frozen. I can't tell. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're frozen.
I'm going to pause it for a quick sec and see if I can get it back. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about the librarians and coaches having such a strong partnership, because the role of the coach and the role of the librarian do have so much overlap. And I think it sounds like you've been really fortunate to work in schools where coaches also see that same overlap so that you guys can collaborate together. One thing that I have really enjoyed when I've been working in school is like running parent sessions and working with like the wider stakeholder community with librarians, because I feel like as a coach, I have like an area of expertise in technology, but as librarians, you guys have areas of expertise in literacy and information literacy and media literacy. And I know you mentioned already digital citizenship, digital literacy, information literacy. Are there any favorite topics that you have like dived into with coaches that you think are interesting, or I don't know, that strike your fancy as a librarian?
Oh, well, one, we put on our library hats, and then we try to make them addicts, right? We're all constantly learning, right? We're all lifelong learners. So I take every opportunity to be a zealot, a literary evangelist to everyone, and that includes the coaches.
So just literacy in general. Okay. What do you do when you don't have the opportunity to work with a coach? So you've had all these great collaborative relationships, but doesn't mean you always have access to working with a coach. Like, what do you do when they're not there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as much as I've had someone there who I was in line with, that doesn't mean the whole school culture was in line. We're as I said earlier, we're all in middle leadership. So unless the strategic leadership also kind of sees that same basic vision and freedom to give people time to work together to support others, then you struggle. So, last year I had a very interesting year where I was covering 2 different campuses at the same time. So I spent 3 days at one and 2 days in the other. And so did Pim in this regard, but not the same days. So we're not in the same place in the same time, and there's a lot of moving parts to whenever you want to help out. And like, part of what makes our jobs great is that we can be there for people when they need it, right? Just what they need, just when they need it. But when pillars are put up and you're fixed here at this place or at this time, it does very much get in the way. That kind of inflexibility gets in the way of being able to collaborate and help.
So what'd you do? You didn't have your coaching partner to work with. Like, how'd you manage that?
I relied on my past. I mean, I guess I do have a bit of that advantage in that I have been a coach myself as the only coach in the school. So I kind of knew what that was like. Not that it's it's ideal, because it isn't. But I knew that it was so I can always fall back on that. And it's nice. I guess it's nice to have that confidence to know, yeah, okay, if I have to do everything myself, from plugging things into the wall to setting up, reading databases and subscriptions or whatever, then I can do all that. I do that for lots of stuff. Barb Reed, who's the primary teacher librarian at UWC Singapore East, mentioned once that she set up this reading online database called Epic for every single classroom in the primary, for every teacher in the classroom. She did it all, and it's some arduous work. And I understood immediately why she said it, and I accepted it, and I've done it every year since, because it's the kind of thing that takes the weight off a classroom teacher. I set it up in the background, and then whenever possible in this school, I'm just going into the grade level meetings with the PYP coordinator anyways, and we've just allocated a bit of time for me to kind of quickly upskill them if they don't know what it is and how it works. So in the end, if you're the only one and it's on you, then you just do it, right? Because in the end, that's the reality. If you have more people to collaborate with and more hands to carry the load, then you're of course you're going to be further ahead. But we do what we can.
How did you get those skills in the first place? Like, your experience being a coach, where was that? Just personal passion that came from the classroom, or?
I think, like a lot of our colleagues who've been a coach at one time or another, the majority of us seem to be classroom teachers who were doing it to some degree within our own classrooms, and there's not one story in order how you become a coach, right? You guys talked about this before. I think mine is a similar story to many, in that I identified a need. I saw as a classroom teacher that there was a huge hole in ed tech, and that I didn't see anyone else who could provide it. And I didn't see that they were going to really be able to that easily find anyone else. And I put my hand up.
And I think in that sense, that's almost also the answer to what do you do when you don't have a coach? It's like, if you're able to see the need, see what needs to be done, and then you have the skills to kind of pull that together. And I guess the even harder question that is potentially maybe more interesting for coaches and other librarians, and maybe classroom teachers too, I don't know, is what if you don't have the skills to solve that problem? Then what do you do? Like, you've identified this need, you're the only one, you don't have somebody to collaborate with, but you don't know how to do it. How do you solve that problem?
Well, it is a good. I think one of the answers is things like coattail, right? One of the answers is getting involved in a large group that okay, you have the passion, you have the interest, but you don't have the skills and you don't see anything around you. Then you go outside of your school, right? And coattail or junior learning is an example of that, right? There's others as well, but that's a good one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a common theme throughout all these interviews, is the importance of having a personal learning network and being connected with others, so that I think what you're talking about is what we talk about all the time. It's these individuals who are so passionate about taking that next step, whatever it might be, either for yourself, for your school, for the students, for another teacher. And how do you take that next step is you have to have those connections to be able to support you in moving forward.
Oh, absolutely.
So knowing that you have had all this coaching experience and you have all these skills of figuring out what you don't know and finding out how to get it, what do you think the essential elements for coaching success in a school are? What do we need to build a coaching culture?
I'm certain that I'm going to reiterate what some others of our colleagues have said, because it's what I believe to be my truth. It's all about relationships. When I first started teaching, we called it building rapport. It seems now they've substituted the word relationships as more of the key word. But in the end, it's everything. It's everything with the students. It's everything with the teachers. It's everything with the parents and admin and back office staff. It's everything. If you want to help somebody, you need to know that somebody. You have to have built a relationship. There needs to be some trust there. They need to believe that you're there to make their life better, easier, add value, that sort of thing. And you can't just rush in and do that. You can't just push your way in. You can't just shove your way in, right? And that doesn't matter whether you're a coach or a librarian. As I said, they overlap the same in that respect as well. You need to build relationships. You need to understand who they are and where they're at, and differentiate like they're the individual human being that they are.
And in a school setting, the building relationships that you're talking about, those are individual relationships. Are there any structures within the school that you think are really critical to allow the fostering of that trust between individuals? Like, is there anything that needs to happen from a school-wide level to put that in place?
Yes, there's certain things with the infrastructure of the school that make a big difference. So why do I feel so empowered this year? Because our PYP coordinator is fabulous and welcoming. And I'm not only am I invited to all the meetings, but meeting times are arranged for, you know, whenever I'm able to get make myself available. So she asked me first, well, you know, when can, this first 20 minutes, well, if you're available the first 20 minutes, then we'll do stuff that involves you in the first 20 minutes or the last 20 minutes of the periods, whatever. So not only am I invited, but they're catering to the schedule a little bit. Because in the end, I'm trying to be where the action is. As a coach, I was trying to be where the action is. As a teacher librarian, I have a space. It's one of the big differences often between a coach and a librarian is you have a physical space. Sometimes you can have a maker space and whatnot, and that becomes your physical space. But often coaches are, you know, I certainly, as when I was a coach, I felt a lot like a French teacher with her cart going around from place to place, being homeless all the time. So as a librarian, you have a home, but I like being where the action is. So if the action is in the classroom, because that's where the unit of inquiry is living and breathing, then that's where I want to be. So I'm out and moving around a lot, and having a coordinator who totally understands that and empowers that really helps a lot. So those kind of infrastructures make a big difference.
I love that when we're talking about the culture that creates successful collaboration, it starts with that feeling of being invited and welcomed. And I think that tone can be so easily set by everyone. And when it's set by leadership, it's easy for the staff to like pick up that. And we talked about this with someone else. I don't think the episode has come out yet, but how easy it is to break that too. And like, it's a lot of little things, and what you described were very small things, but they make a really big difference. And so being conscious of those small things, not only as a leader in a school, but also as a peer and as a coach and as a librarian, I think those are really good points to remember. So this has all been super positive about coaching so far. What about when coaching fails? What causes coaching to fail? When does it fail? What can we do about it when it fails? And we can talk either about when do coaches fail or when does the model of coaching fail? What do you think about that?
Sure. As far as when coaching fails, I think it's when you don't seek to understand before being understood. When you push and you shove and you just, I have this fun new thing that you will love. It's perfect for what you're trying to do, without actually listening to what they need or where they're at. And where their comfort level is at and what they're doing with their kids and where their kids are at. You know, sometimes you can have a teacher that is quite tech savvy or whatever, but they realize that they have a class where if you're doing too much tech, it doesn't work for that group, right? So it's not pushing, it's not shoving, it's listening and understanding before being understood on an individual level.
In one of the videos, I remember Tricia saying something like she had a realization that her pace was not the school's pace and that she needed to kind of like check herself on that. And I think about that all the time because that's what you're talking about. Like as a coach or even as a librarian, anyone in a position of supporting others, you have something you're super passionate about. You have your own personal agenda. And sometimes it's really hard to just take a step back and listen and look and observe and see, okay, I can help that person get to this place, but it's going to take me way longer than I want. And I have to be okay with that and like move at their pace, not my pace. But yeah, I totally. So have you ever found yourself in that situation where you were pushing and you probably shouldn't have? How did you like stop yourself?
Well, I think it's happened more than once. To say that I learned the lesson the very first time, I think would be dishonest. I've had principals that, you know, have maybe not in the nicest way, but said, you know, oh, Danny, you're here, and they're right here. They're, you know, and you know, you can have to wait a while. And there was some truth to that, and maybe there was also some of their own bias to that, and whatever. And then I've had other times where like I just saw you kind of catch it in the moment, like I'm pushing too hard. They're not ready for this, and so you know you learn to pull back. You're as you're suggesting something, you see that there's a lot of pushback, and you pull back yourself. And then hopefully you get to a stage where if you've built up relationships with people, there's goodwill there, and they'll humor it and try it out, or they'll say, you know, and very kindly, I don't think my kids are ready for that. And you'll have a relationship to know that that's not personal. That's just them knowing their kids, right? And in the end, they do know their kids better. They spent more time with them.
I don't know if you ever feel this way, but I think my personal challenge in this situation is whenever I'm working with teachers, I always feel this pressure that I want to be able to solve their problem. And they're talking to me right now, and I want to be able to do it, whatever it is, I want to come to it right now and help them. And I've learned over the years, many times, like you're saying, certainly wasn't the first time, that I need to say, let me mull that over. Can I get back to you tomorrow or whatever? Because I need to step away from whatever they're telling me, think about all the wonderful, amazing things I could possibly do, then stop myself and then think about that person. What does that person want to do? Because my first thought is always like, well, we could do this. And I need to like physically not be in front of that person so that I can like pause. What do they need? Okay, this is their next step to get them to wherever it is I'm like super excited about. And I find that really hard because I feel like they're coming to me because I'm the one who can help them, and I want to help them so bad. But to help them, I need that like an hour, 24 hours, however much time to like walk away and check it. So I get that. What, in your position as a librarian, what makes a coach invaluable to you? What do they do? How do they help you? How do they support you? What makes them so invaluable to you?
Right. Well, we're all of us who are, you know, in non-contact positions of one another. I see my role often as a fun collector, right? So in addition to collecting resources and stuff that helps, I'm also looking for what the newest stuff is, and not just as a gimmick, but newest stuff that helps drive teaching, drive learning, drive units of inquiry, and that sort of thing. And really, classroom teachers just don't very often have the time in their daily schedules, in their evening schedules, you know, because they're decompressing from being around, 20, 30 people constantly all day long. So I think coaches similarly being able to help mine the internet for all of the gorgeous nuggets that are out there, and to be those early adopters that try things out, that take the risks and figure them out so that we can share them out, and that ends up being something that a kid uses in exhibition that makes it rock,
I like that idea of being like the test pilot, cool. And then final question for you. I have a feeling this is going to be a hard question for you to answer, and you're not going to have like an answer already, but in your experience going from classroom teacher to coach to librarian, can you recall, or do you have an aha moment where you at first were like, I don't think coaching is a valuable role in schools, but now I realize how valuable and important that is? Is there a story behind it, or is there anything you can kind of point to in terms of, oh, that's what coaching is for, that's why it's so valuable?
Well, I'll steer the question in a slightly different way, I guess, in saying that I felt passionately myself that it was needed, but at large times at first I didn't feel that others necessarily felt it was needed. It basically felt like I was not that different than a traditional ICC teacher coming in, teaching a standalone lesson or a set of lessons where the teacher may or may not be in the room, and I'm basically teaching tech to kids. And that I knew was not it. And luckily the admin didn't see it that way either, right? They saw it as an integrated position, although it was a part-time position because I was also doing some learning support. But it was an integrated position and not a prep lesson for the teachers. So at first, when some of them would just sit idly by and not be necessarily involved, I had my own wonderings on where this was going and how successful it would be. But as I spent more and more time in the grade level meetings, which is one of the best parts of coaching, one of the best parts of being a librarian, because you're the closest to where the decisions are made as to what tasks and activities and fun the learning will turn out to be. So as I got more and more involved in there, I again rebuilt my conviction in why I felt it was needed, because I think that in many schools where there isn't a big coaching culture, it's because butts and seats is the driver, and coaching doesn't necessarily put butts in seats. It does a lot of other things. It builds community, it empowers, it connects, it provides access, it connects people and ideas. It does lots of things, but it doesn't necessarily put butts in seats. And if that's the mindset of those in upper leadership, then it's not so easy. It's not very easy to develop a coaching culture.
Cool. So that time with classroom teachers is a good opportunity for insight for coaches to help them make that aha moment shift from seeing coaching as just an ICT teacher to seeing it as a collaborative partner in the planning process.
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Danny. Really appreciate it. There is lots of gems in there that I will put in the show notes for everybody. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much for watching our video today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you'll know when we release a new video each week. At Eduro Learning, as you know, we want to help you coach better. To get you started, we've got a free digital download for you called 5 Strategies for Your Coaching Toolkit right in the description box below. And if you're looking for even more, we now offer private coaching sessions to help you work through any specific issue you might be having as a coach or even just as an educator. Do you have a problem you can't seem to solve? Get your introductory private coaching session for free with us. Learn more at edurolearning.com/private coaching. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.